All right, welcome to Stampscapes 101 or the Stampscapes Lab, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to try to do something with my brayer here. I just did a little project with it on clayboard art tiles, and I thought, I wonder if that brayer can kind of come in handy for a Northern Lights type of scenario here. That'll just kind of speed along the process, okay? So I'm going with a neutral yellow here, okay? It's not like a golden yellow or something like that, something with a little bit of red in it or orange, okay? Like an ochre or something like that. Because I'm going to go into my green tone spectrum for this one. Okay, so I'm just getting some ink on this. You don't have to cover the whole thing. I mean, this is just a quarter page card, so 4¼ inch width right here, because this is going to be a portrait configuration here. But I'm just going to go for a nice big slathering of this yellow ink, okay? Kind of move it around, change your rotation so you get all these little bits kind of filled in here. Depending on what ink brand you are using. I'm using Marvy, which is a little bit of a thinner but very dense formula of ink. A lot of inks are a lot thicker than this one, so the thicker ones might not absorb and stain your surface as fast as the Marvy ones. A thinner ink is going to penetrate the surface a lot easier, right? Because it can get into the pores, okay? So I'm using a glossy cardstock here. You can use a semi-gloss. The matte paper might not be as good for this one in terms of some of the things I'm going to do afterwards, but you can do it, but it's just keep in mind that it's going to absorb a lot more of your ink, and it's going to be a little bit of a different process because it's of that absorbency factor. And just, the basics, it's not going to be glossy like this, okay? The glossiness of it comes it comes in handy when I do some of the other types of blending or streaking of color that I'm going to apply in here, okay? Okay, so just keep moving this. You get those little rotation kind of marks on here. That's why you have to kind of change the rotation of your, roller, because like from here, and if I do one rotation, it only gets right here, okay? So, you have to kind of change the rotation of it to get kind of a full coverage. So I can see like a couple little areas right here that still haven't gotten that full kind of saturation there. I don't know, it almost seems like it's like resisting some of the ink in some of these areas for some reason. I might have held this piece of paper with some smudgy, oily fingerprints at some point in time. Here, let me go across this way. No, I'm not going to go across this way later on after this color. But that's a pretty good slathering, okay, of tone right here. Right now, it's a little bit darker on the outside because I was concentrating more of it on the outside like that. Yeah, it might have some of my red on here. I cleaned off some reddish tinge off of there from my last project. I didn't clean it really good though, like really, really good. So I don't know, might have had some of that in there. Okay, now I'm switching to the green here. Okay, now if I didn't say I'm going with a glossy cardstock, which I mentioned, but this is not glossy photo paper, okay? Glossy photo paper looks the same. It is almost the polar extreme difference in terms of how it takes ink if I'm doing it in this type of process right here, okay? So you might think, oh, okay, well, glossy photo paper would be kind of the second best thing. Actually, a matte cardstock would be closer to this in terms of how it accepts the ink than a glossy photo paper. Glossy photo papers are meant to grab that ink. It has this emulsion surface and it grabs the ink and it dries it really fast, okay? Because, when you're using photo paper and you're printing out, a photograph of, whatever on your inkjet printer, they want that ink to dry really fast, okay? Now, cardstock, I mean, they don't want it to take forever for it to dry either, but, they want it to dry faster than, like photo paper. Okay, now this right here, I'm not going to apply as much, okay? But here's what I'm going to test out here to see if I can get kind of a good application of this on here, or a fast application, I should say, with my light green. Okay, you can see those rotation kind of marks right in there. Okay, we'll take care of that later. I want this to have a real kind of streaky look to it, a real curtainy look. They call it curtains, you know, with those northern lights. So I'm just trying to do something where I think I'm going to speed along the process here, a little bit at least. Okay, here we go. I'm kind of starting off the page. I should probably start a little bit, you know, further into the card. So this is like a test for me, you know, I'm just kind of experimenting here. Which is a good kind of way to kind of approach, you know, whatever you're working on in your pieces. Now, if you're following someone directly and, you know, you saw the end result, this is the card that you're going to make and we're going to make this, I get it, you know, where it's like, you know, you want things to come out, you know, a certain way, but I don't know. If you're trying a new technique, I'd see like, I like the idea of going into the your studio and seeing it as more of like a science lab or something like that, you know. It kind of really gives you the mindset of kind of freedom of exploration and fun, as opposed to, you know, something where it's so exacting and precise that you have to come out with a, you know, an exact replica of something else, you know. It kind of has the mindset of, okay, you're a machine, like a copy machine or something like that. Where I get it too, you know, it's like, I really like that card. I want to come up, you know, I want to go through the process and, you know, come up with something exactly. But, you know, a lot of times if someone's doing a card and they were to do it again, it would come out a little bit different. So even for the person that made it, it might come out different, you know. So if I make this card again, it would probably come out a little different. We're all the way to a very dark green here. It's a bottle green, and I'm kind of staying a little bit more perimeter oriented here. Okay. Because you really have to kind of spread it around a little bit. Like I said, you change your rotation a little bit. Here, let me get a little bit more green on this. This one side of my brayer seems like it's resisting ink a little bit more. There we go. You can see, like, we're one side of my card to the next, it's even different. Okay, here, let me use the other side of this brayer here. There we go. Okay, so this is my foundation right here, okay? Now, it's not real streaky or anything like that at all, right? Which I want on here, okay? But that's when I'm going to switch off. I'm going to go to my ink applicator, okay? AKA paper I'm not going to use this one because it's a little really damp right here. Let me see. Well, this is really damp. If you just give me a second, I'll clean off my brayer here. At least of some of this ink. I should really clean off my tools as I'm working with them a little bit more often than I typically do. If I'm using the same color on the brayer, you know, from one project to the next, you know, I typically don't clean off very much. Especially if it's like a stamp that I'm always stamping in black, I don't really clean it off very much at all. Okay, so little bit piece of paper towel like this. You can see it has patterns. Sometimes people say, hey, I can't use my paper towel because it has this pattern, and it prints those patterns out. Well, you smash down, your applicator before you use it on there. You don't use it like just making like light dabs like that where it's going to imprint the pattern, the decorative pattern from the paper towel, okay? So here it's a little bit patterned. You can see it right there, but if you just kind of smash it down like that, that pattern's kind of gone on there. You'd still see it a little bit, but this area right here does not have it. Okay, let's go in and let's start bringing in this kind of more curtainy type of look. Now I'm starting off with this lighter green. Now this green right here is surprisingly stuck on there. It's stuck more than I thought it would be. In terms of a hard stain down here, I thought with all of that yellow down there underneath it and the light green, this would be a little bit more malleable, okay? But you can see where it's not. But that's okay though, okay? We'll build up to it here. So see, I'm adding in more of my light green in here to get this a little bit more saturated, because what ideally I want eventually is I want to be able to manipulate the ink that's already kind of, it's laying down on the surface of the, but it's almost kind of floating on the surface. Okay, now here's the green that I just applied. And this is where I'm going to smooth things out a little bit more and to get it a little bit streakier looking, okay? So you can see that right in there. See the streak in here? You kind of, you want these hanging curtain type of things. I'll show you what I mean by that when I get a little bit darker. I might have to go to black in order to see that here. I went a little bit dark right here. Okay, now I'm going to come up from the bottom like this too, okay? And kind of leave it a little bit, have a little bit of space in between these. See that isolated streak right there? Here, we need another one up here too. So I'm going to come in here like this, and I'm going to go like that. See, that's what gives you that really cool kind of streaky, curtainy type of look to your pieces. So this kind of really harsh line right here. See how I kind of came in here? And I'm kind of bringing that around a little bit. Now yours might not look like this, but what you do is you just kind of keep with it. But don't try to jump into your next darker tone too fast. Work with it a little bit, and develop the color that you're applying in there to you kind of get it at its, kind of, I don't know whether to its full saturated, it's kind of its full potential. Okay, now I'm going to throw this in here. This is a color that you probably wouldn't think about if you're going to go with this kind of color scheme like this, but it's a dark brown, okay? And I just like to kind of switch things up, because if I just keep going with green, sometimes it looks, you can see how much darker that brown is right there. It doesn't read as brown, it's just a darker tone. Like even like a violet or something like that might get you to kind of a darker look. And this right here, not that I want kind of real earthy type of look up here in my sky with that dark brown, but it just adds that little bit of extra richness. See, that's like a color that you're not going to get straight out of some pad. But it adds that kind of little element. You can do like a lighter brown in like a blue colored composition sometimes. Sometimes it's not that tone of brown. It might be like a tan or something like that, but I really like that look. I don't know, it grounds things a little bit more in terms of, sometimes things can look like a fluorescent color, like a real kind of unnatural color. And brown is the thing that can kind of eradicate that. See that right there? That little tinge in there. It's a little bit different. Okay, so that was my dark brown. And here's black, okay? Now, as I'm doing this, I think I've gotten to this point a lot faster with the brayer than just streaking it in all of those other colors, like in the same process, starting off with yellow. So that yellow, I don't know, maybe I would just do the first two colors or something like that. I don't know. But if you do it, don't just color with them. Go over it a few times. I probably should have went over it a few more times with just the yellow and maybe the light green. Okay? But don't go over everything. Don't just all yellow and all light green. I guess you could, but don't do it with like all the, colors. Otherwise, you're just going to be toning everything in individually. And we want this kind of glow to be showing through. So I'm a little bit too dark over here, on this side, probably. I should have left it a little bit lighter on there, but so be it. This is like my first time with the brayer here. And I crept that dark green over, but I think it'll look cool anyways. Now this could be like a water scene or something like that if I do it horizontal, but if the presentation is vertical, it's a little bit more of that kind of northern light look here, okay? And it'll look even more so when I add in my imagery into this. This is a scene that I've done many, many times, and I'll do it with the Lakeside Cove just as for myself as a little comparison contrast type of thing. Okay, so we have black right here in the corners like that, but look at that glow like that. And see, this is really glowing up here because the yellow is underneath there, okay? But as I'm looking at that, I'm kind of curious to know if I can get a little bit brighter with some additional yellow. If I put yellow over the top of this in dye-based inks, it's not going to make those areas look lighter, okay? But maybe we can make it look more kind of saturated and rich with some of this additional yellow. So let's go over it again. Let me do this. I happen to have my re-inker right here of yellow. I'm going to put a few drops on this, like that. Okay. And we're just going to go over it like this again with this yellow here. Can you tell? I don't know if you can tell if that's a little bit brighter right there. It's kind of glowing a little bit more, I think. Okay. So it's a pretty big slathering of that yellow on there. Okay. Now this is going to be a Northern Lights type of thing. So, yeah, okay, here's the thing. Even if you don't get this really kind of smooth looking or as saturated as I have it here, all right, don't worry about it. Try to add in this extra process. And just think about it for next time, do the exercise again. If you do like 2 or 3 of these, you'll really get the technique down because you refine it each time. You can say, hey, I needed to use more yellow or something like that, or I need to use less of, a darker tone or something like that. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Bleed proof white splatter painting with a toothbrush right here. We're going to go into it like this. This is where I tend to think that when you layer down extra little textures and things like that, it really kind of brings things together. Okay, so I just have a little bit of this paint right on the tip like that. Can you see it? And then I'm going to remove a lot of it. So I'm going to sop it out of there because I don't need very much on here at all. Okay. Quarter page card. And this is an opaque water color paint. You can use other types of white. You can even use your gel pen to add these stars. This is just going to be faster and it gives it a little bit more of a kind of a varied look, I tend to think, with splatter painting because it's kind of hard to control in some ways. Okay, now I'm going down here, which is going to represent the water, but maybe it's little reflections in the water or something like that. Okay, I'll make the stars a little bit stronger in a couple of areas right here. You gotta make sure that you don't kind of overspray. You can overspray, but try not to overspray by like 5 times too much. If you go over by like double what you think might have been ideal, it's still fine because it's just a fine little dots like that. Now, if you go over it like too much, oh, I ruined it. You know what I mean? It's like I got too many stars like that. Allow this to dry a little bit. It doesn't take too long, a few seconds. And then, if you don't like some of those stars, it's too much. Take your ink like that and just dab over them. Maybe dab over it with green or something and make some of those stars like a dark green instead of white, and it won't stand out as much. Sometimes it gives this gives those stars like a little bit extra depth, or tap over some and make some yellow instead of white so that you're decreasing the contrast of some of them. I think it makes it look, you know, your scenario here in terms of your sky depth, which, you know, which we're going for, which are going for kind of like a deep, you know, spatial type of representation here, you know, where you're seeing the northern lights here and whatever the atmosphere, and then you're seeing the stars twinkle through in deep space, right? It's supposed to represent, I don't know, whatever millions of miles here on the surface of your glossy cardstock. So, you know what I mean? So going for a little bit less, you know, stronger contrast with some of these dots, and some of them are a little bit less. Here, I'll even show you right here. We'll add in kind of a little bit of a larger star here and there. You can draw in your favorite constellation or something like that. But, you know, some of these little stronger, larger stars like that. See how much depth there is right up in there? Okay, let's go for our, I might have it, yeah, I still have it right on my paper right here. You might allow that to set up a little bit longer, okay? If you're using, it's most other brands of inks other than Marvy that are going to be juicier and moister, but this might be like super moist for you if you've laid down as much ink as I have in the Marvies, okay? Also depends on what cardstock you're using. If you're using like a really super juicy, I mean a super glossy cardstock, it's sealed off a little bit more, so you might have more of this ink sitting on the surface. Okay, so that being said, when you stamp your imagery over the top of it, go with a type of ink that's going to give you the best impression, okay? So I'm going with a Marvy Black. You can use a like a stays-on one. If you're going with a, if you've tried this in like a matte paper, okay, remember it's not going to be glossy and look like this. It'll look a little bit different, but you can kind of play around with it. Maybe you do like a soft application and maybe it's not quite so saturated, but if you're doing that on a matte paper, you can use your VersaFine Clear, you know what I mean? Use whatever your favorite black ink is that is compatible with the surface that you happen to be using. Now, I said you can't do this on this streaky type of thing on photo paper, but maybe you do, you know, some sort of alcohol ink amorphic background, you know, with these similar colors or something like that. You could splatter paint it with the white paint like that, and then stamp onto the photo paper, you know, with a water-based media for your impression, and that'll work out just fine, okay? It's not going to look like probably real streaky on the photo paper. I think photo paper just dries too fast. I don't know, you might be able to get some kind of look, you know, with alcohol inks or something like that. You know, you've seen those oxide inks where they lay down some colors and then they spray it with like a spray ball or something like that, and it's water reactive. It goes back into solution. They kind of spread out like watercolors or something like that. That could be a really fun look in this color scheme, okay? It'd probably look less curtainy and kind of more, you know, nebulous, or, you know what I mean? Like a nebula or something like that type of look. Sometimes those types of things look like it could be underwater, but sometimes when you do those deep space types of color schemes or textures, it can kind of look like, you know, depending on what color scheme probably, but it can almost look like you can use that same background for deep space, or like, you know, the deep sea, or I don't know, something like that. Okay, so I'm holding this down a little bit longer, you know, going for my black impression. I'm checking right here. I gotta make sure that I didn't stamp it out in that dark green. If you stamped it out in the dark green, it would look pretty cool too. It would look like, it would just look, it would recede a little bit, being that it's lighter than black. Okay, I think that should be enough. And there you got your Northern Lights type of thing, your curtains. Okay, so what time frame are we looking at? Let's see, 25 minutes right there. Okay. Now you can add in like a little saying or quote stamp up here, something like that. You can, mat your card off. But I think that the Brayered first couple colors in there, because you want to go for a really strong saturation of ink, that could be a good bet to go with. And remember, with that first color, you're not just coloring, you're not just getting a full application of, in this case, yellow top to bottom, okay? But you're going for a little bit of a saturation of it. So you want to color the surface, but you also want to permeate the surface and get into the pulp a little bit with some of that first ink. It's like your base layer of ink that allows that ink to enter and moisten that interior just a little bit. I mean, it's not wet to the touch or anything like that after you do that, but it moistens everything up. And you can see, I mean, I had a pretty harsh line of that darker green right here, but I was able to kind of streak into it though, because I can blend into a piece of paper that's a little bit moist or moister than I can with a piece of paper that's dry, where, once you apply it, it is set, right? So kind of moist into moist is the thing that makes this like really nice application and smooth application of those darker inks, dark green, black, much, much easier. You can blend, wet into moist easier than you can wet into dry. So keep that in mind. And you saw me go back to yellow. I had a little bit more of that in there because I think the paper was drying too on me a little bit, even by the time I got to in some of these darker colors. So you just go back in there and edit. If you have too harsh of a streak, like this is a pretty harsh streak of this green here. I think it's okay though. I think it looks real curtainy, but let's say if this was right here against a much lighter, light beam or whatever curtain like that up there, I would come back in here. I wouldn't try to blend this out using that dark color. I would go back in here and make these two areas darker. So you go back in and you blend more of this right over the top of that. It doesn't make that lighter, but it makes those areas next to it darker. So it decreases the contrast between, something that you might think it looks obtrusive. You decrease the contrast between it so it looks more obscure, okay? So anyways, fun stuff. If you have a brayer, that you want to bust out, you want to kind of do a little experiment with it. I'm going to try something right here with this light green here. I really like this light green color here. I think it makes things glow really nicely. See, I'm just kind of adding in a little bit more of that lighter green like that. It changed it a little bit, didn't it? Now I got rid of all my little, stars in that area. Now they're kind of light green stars that are kind of invisible. So I'll just go and add in, a couple little larger stars into that area like that. See that right here? Let's add in a couple little reflections of those stars down here in the water, like so. I don't know if you can see it right here, but all right, so that is your Northern Lights type of thing. I think it makes for a pretty quick card. And like I said, you can do all kinds of other types of techniques. You can do watercolors or something like that. If you want to go for those curtainy types of things. Now, this curtainy, in reality, would be dark underneath here. And you'd have this kind of curtainy thing kind of running across the sky like that, where it's darker and then curtains in the middle and then darker down here. But if you're doing scenic stamping, if this is all dark down here, you wouldn't be able to see my impression, in this case of the Lakeside Cove that's stamped down here. Or if you have anything down here, you wouldn't be able to see it because it would be black against black. That's why I go, for this lighter area down here, and I just stamp out whatever imagery that I'm doing across there. I like to do water scenes because you get a little bit of that light in the sky down here in the reflective water area, which is really fun to do. I need to do this in a I don't know if I've done a Northern Lights type of thing as a reflection card before, but I'll have to do that sometime or try it out. But anyways, yeah, the brayer came in handy, and I think I'll utilize that should I want to do certain types of applications with heavy, heavy saturations of your base layer inks on there. Just over the entire thing. If it's in like these little certain sections, I can't use the brayer, but if it's just doing it over the entire card, it really came in handy. So, all right. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.